very much, Kat, and welcome everyone to this final Lunch and Learn. And I'm very happy to be with you today. I'm very excited to share the next 90 minutes with you. If you haven't already switched off anything that could disrupt your brain, distract your brain, like email, mobile phones, WhatsApp, Messenger, all those things, so that you can focus on you and your coaching for the next 90 minutes. And like me, you might have got a cup of tea as well. And of course, it's lunchtime in the UK, so do feel free to lunch and learn as we go. So how the session will go is that it is interactive. It's not just going to be me sharing things. There are slides, and I've realised, by the way, as I've not done some in-person training for a while because of you know what, I seem to be doing more slides than ever, and I'm trying to get away from that now. So apologies for that. Permission to coach you, to stretch you, challenge you, and for you to do that with each other. There is going to be an opportunity for you to coach each other later on, as I said. And also, all of us are coaches here, and we're going to find out a little bit more about each other in a moment. But think about, do you, with what we're thinking about with the new competency, to think about, well, do you do this or not? And I always encourage you to think, because often we can think we do, and especially for those of us who have been around for a while, we can get into a few bad habits, of course, as well. So, you know, this is your space to practice and share stuff and not worry about it, as it were. Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen. I can see some more people that are coming in, and often I can find this a bit clunky, but hopefully it will work. Can you all see that? Kat, yeah, is that okay? Thank you. And I just want to also say, I'm going to be very open with you in that I had my booster jab at the weekend, and I'm still feeling a little bit not quite 100%. I'm the 1 in 10 that seems to get floored with it. So if I'm not quite with it, I apologise for that. But hopefully we'll be okay. So we want to have fun. As I say, and just test stuff out, and I promise you we'll be able to implement what we discuss, what we uncover immediately, whether you're going to be coaching, mentoring or supervising as well. Okay, and as always, I like to say this is about you contributing your learning, because when you contribute, you help others make new neural connections in their brain and to deepen and hardwire their learning. And so you sharing stuff really does help others. And there are, you know, there's no wrongs or rights here. We want to hear what your thinking is. So we want you to volunteer your contributions. However, if it gets a bit quiet and there's tumbleweed, please can I then call on you to contribute, because we do want to hear from you. And also you're going to be typing in the chat as well. Okay, so this is what we're going to be doing, which was outlined online. We're going to be thinking about, well, what is the new competency very quickly, how not to do it, how do we not partner client growth, how can we help the client own their growth, and I use client and coachee interchangeably, it seems, and then think about the little sort of 8 compositions of this competency, how we can weave it into our coaching so it's natural. One thing the ICF are very keen on is that it's not clunky, although it might seem clunky today, but it just is natural. And as I said, you're going to have a go and practice, and we'll wrap up with the learning and insights, and also I promised a couple of offers as well with the mentoring. So that is where we are going. And of course, you know, what's the point of you being here? And kudos to you if you've been to all of these lunch and learns. And I really want to acknowledge you for taking time out in your very busy day to focus on you, to focus on your skills, your learning. And, you know, this is all about enhancing your skills and strengths even more so that you get even more effective results with your clients. And there may well be some benefits for both your brains as well. And you've all got a reason for being here. And each of you will have a different reason. So I encourage you to reflect on what's brought you here today. And we also want to get to know one another. And I understand, as I say, some of you have perhaps met in previous lunch and learns. So just want you to type in the chat box your name, if it doesn't come up on screen. I think most of you it does, but where you are, and just share a coaching or other success from the last week. And also, you know, if you are going for a credential, but we'll cover that in a little minute, but just tap away where you are, and a coaching or other success. And I can see we've still got people coming along, which is great. So let's just get to know each other a little bit here. And I can see the chat. So I've got Karen in West London, thank you. Oh, Tracy in Brixton, down in London. Oh, and you're working towards your ACC. And well done for your new client as well, Tracy, thank you. Ah, Lucy in Berlin, welcome to you, over in Germany. I thought this would be international. And great to hear you're having mentoring already. And oh, you've had intro calls today, 2. Well done, that's terrific to hear. Oh, and Kat, who's in Manchester, who's already ICF ACC. And I know you're doing a big, have you finished your challenge, Kat? Or is it still going on? No, it's
a year-long challenge, so I won't be done until Halloween next year.
Oh wow, so a year. Oh, and gaining 3 prospects, that is very good as well. That's fantastic. And I love the fact everyone is sharing successes, because you may or may not know the brain is often wired to think what didn't go so well. So, oh, and Di in Bristol, welcome to you, and a breakthrough with a hospice client. And that's lovely to hear. And Debbie in Guildford. Oh, and you're about to start the diploma, and I have a feeling you might be referring to the NMS one. So welcome to the world of coaching, Debbie. And Irina in Milan, over in lovely Italy. Oh, wow, client rebooked for 24 sessions. Something to celebrate as well. And often, I don't know about you, everyone, but I'm finding people are taking action more speedily as we head towards the end of the year, rather than waiting till January to get started. They're getting going, so fantastic to hear. And Sandy up in London as well, you're working towards ACC. Oh, Jeanette in Stockholm, and you're getting your diploma. Oh, and you're partnering oh, with a municipality, I can't say the word today, as a coach. And oh, Sam near Wimbledon, and ACC studying for you. And oh, you're noticing you're embodying the competencies. And Tanya, all the way up in Scotland there. And oh, yes, we've heard about that. Glad you got your power on. So, and in London. So, oh, and over in Mumbai. So we've got people here, coaches here from all over the world, which is just so lovely. And thank you very much, and great to hear all your successes, and really thank you for joining. And it does mean that having coaches from everywhere and trained from everywhere means we do have a rich experience, I always think. So and keep posting in the chat, please. And so what we're going to do is today, it's very much about and have I jumped one? Set your intention. Here we go. Yeah. What would you like to take away from the next 90 minutes? The brain responds to commands and intention, and we direct it to focus on something. So what would you like to take away? What do you need to learn or know? And again, if you want to type in the chat or shout out, you're welcome. Well, everybody's been very quiet, Kat.
I'm happy to be verbal. I need to wake my brain up a little bit. So I haven't really thought about it until you asked the question. I think for me today, I just want to make sure that my client is getting what they need from the sessions in terms of their growth, and that it's not about me. And in the sessions, I know that it's always tempting to ask at the end, you know, what have you got out of this? And I'm sort of conscious that it's more, the question is actually there for me more than the client. So I think this would just be a good focus to make sure that actually I am focused on them and that they're getting what they need and it's not about me.
Okay, super to hear. Thank you, Marie. And thank you for being so open and honest about that. And we can also help you think about how you know you're going to get, or the client is taking away what they need, and that they did get what they wanted. Anybody else have anything to add? What's your intention? What do you want to get out of it today? Oh, Sandy, I can see you want a broader perspective. The multiverse is always more inspiring than your universe. I love that. Thank you. We'll have metaverse soon, won't we? Okay. All right. So you've all got your reasons for being here. And as I say, let's move on and get into what this is all about. Okay. So this is the competency, which is part of its own sort of subsection, D, cultivating learning and growth. And it's facilitating client growth and partners with the client to transform learning and insight into action. Promotes client autonomy in the coaching process. And I'm curious, who has already got their credential, whether it's ACC or above with the International Coaching Federation, and who actually is working towards their credential? I just kind of want I don't know let's see the easiest way, I think, and Kat, correct me if I'm wrong, put your hand up if you've already got your credential. And Kat, you might be able to see more people than I can. So just want a quick show of hands. Who's got a credential with the International Coach Federation? Because if I'm correct, this looks like more of you have not than have. Is that right, Kat? Is that what you're saying?
It does look like it's only me, but I can't see everyone's hands.
Yeah. I can't see. Where do you get to raise? Is it easy for everyone to see again? Because I've got a different view, haven't I? See where you raise your hand.
Yeah, so if you can raise your hands in the reactions at the bottom right hand side of your screen if you want to do it virtually. Thank
you, Kat. Yeah, and you can also raise your hand just the old-fashioned way as well. Okay, so it looks like then that the majority of you have yet to gain your credential. And the reason I ask that is because you may know that the International Coaching Federation have updated their competencies and re-looked at the ethics and everything and revised it. And what this one, as far as I'm aware, does, this number 8, it takes into account, it's a sort of merger, an amendment of the previous competency, which was all about designing actions, and also the final competency, which was managing learning and accountability. Now, I've been training these competencies in coach training for years, and I know my brain is hardwired on the old ones. So it's you know, if you are familiar with the old ones, be kind to yourself as you sort of revise into these new ones. Okay, so I want to just think about, you know, we've got a little definition here, which we will come back to. You know, it partners with the client to transform learning and insight into action, promotes client autonomy in the coaching process. And sometimes it's easier to think about what it isn't when we want to do something, what we don't want to do first, and get that out of the way before we think about what we want to do. And so what I wanted to do was for you to just get to know each other in small groups. And I know Kat is primed and ready to go to pop you in groups. And how many have we got? About 4 groups of 4 or 5, something like that. Hopefully that is intimate enough. And what I'd love you to do is think about what it's not. How not to partner client growth. What would you have to be doing as a coach to really not be doing this? And for doing it for them, if you like, and to not be partnering them, and for your client to really not enjoy this part of the coaching and not be having a good time. And just have a small a discussion in your group. And if we take about 7 minutes, just to have a discussion of what it's not, and then we'll come back, do a quick debrief, and then get into what it actually is. Okay, Kat, over to you.
Okay, I'm opening the rooms now.
And welcome back, and I trust that you enjoyed your discussions in your groups and also getting to know one another. So let's just hear from you, or type in the chat, you know, how do we know if we're not partnering with your client, do you think, to facilitate their growth? What would you be doing or saying instead? What are some of the ideas you've got? What do you think? You can raise your hand. Oh, giving advice, yes, that's not coaching, is it? That's telling. Colluding with them. Oh yeah, getting into going into that rabbit hole with them. And Sandy, you raised your hand. Yeah. What would you like to add?
Well, if there's a conflict of interest, if say you're employed by a company or a school, and then you've got to abide by what they want, and then the client might, I couldn't serve the client 100% because of that. Yeah.
I love that. So yes, you know, even from the sort of the start, before the coaching engagement, you know, the organisation is wanting you to do something with the client rather than thinking about what they want. Yes, leading them, directing them, imposing our own agenda, which of course we could do right from the start. And I know we've covered coaching the agreement as it part earlier on in this series. So yeah, if you're telling them what they need, and of course, if companies are, organisations, what else? What else would you not, you know, would you be doing if you weren't doing this well? What other ideas? And Emma Dewhurst, I can see your hand raised.
Hello, yes. Hi, everybody. Sorry I was late. Something that came up for me with a client recently was allowing, in every sense, the focus for the session to remain open at the end. So there was no solution or resolution at the end of this particular session. And often there is a kind of completion or a kind of achieving of the focus that has been set for the session, and there simply wasn't. It was the first time we had dealt with the issue. It was a big one, and it was the theme of guilt, and it was simply not going to wrap itself up nicely at the end of 1 hour for this client. And I really had to sit with allowing that to be really open and something that he would or wouldn't bring back, you know.
Great point, Emma. Yeah, because if you've helped them to set the agreement and the outcome for the coaching conversation, whether it's a one-off session or part of a, you know, a series of goal-focused engagement, if you like, by setting the agreement, the outcome at the start, you know how to wrap up at the end, whether they've got what they wanted. So it's sort of, I think this competency is starting earlier on, as it were, not right necessarily when we get to the how are they going to grow. So thank you. Criticising them, either verbally, yes, absolutely, that's not coaching, is it? God, that's horrible. Do you know what? I once, when I was assessing a coach, which I do, against the ICF competencies, I remember them laughing at my content. I was like, God, you know, and that it gave me what, in my brain-friendly world, you may know, I specialise in the neuroscience of coaching and leadership. I had a limbic response. I saw red. I was then shut down, didn't want to be open. So yes, we want to very much keep our clarity of distance, Sam. Thank you for reminding us of that. They're the expert in their own life. Asking about actions too early. And thank you, Harry, for that. Yes, it's knowing when to ask at the right time. When is that an action? Can I hear that that's an action? Or am I rushing them to move forward? Because of course, coaching is all about helping your client to move forward. From here they are, where do they want to go? And you're there to stimulate the thinking, to facilitate their self-directed learning and draw it out of them, quite literally, and facilitate that process. And I think something that can help us to remind us of this as coach, what are we in charge of? The content or the process? Who'd like to answer that? Emma Dewhurst, thank you. The process, yeah. And I liken it is, you know, there's a line between the coaching process and the content. And as coach, we don't cross over that line into the content. Who owns the content of the coaching session? The client. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And, you know, it's all about their agenda and what they want to get out of it. And thank you. So before we move on then to think more about what this is and how we know we're doing it, Jeanette has added about, you know, we know that, you know, if we're not challenging them enough, or we might be over challenging them. And it's important that we challenge our coaches the right level. We go at their pace. They control the pace of their coaching. And how do you think we can help them have that autonomy so that they're facilitating that great amount of growth? What's one way that we can do that? What ideas have you got?
Sorry, could you repeat the question, Rachel?
Yeah, if I can repeat it in the same way. How do you think we can help them so that they're controlling the pace of the coaching, so that they're growing at a pace that's right for them in a sort of a high level way, if you like? What's a simple thing we could do?
Checking in about direction, that the direction the conversation is going is direction that they want regularly, rather than just leaving it towards the end of the session.
Absolutely, thank you. And I'm not sure it popped up who that was. Who was?
It was Siobhan.
Siobhan, thank you, Siobhan. Yeah, so yeah, checking in with them regularly, you know, quite literally asking them, how are we doing for you in terms of, you know, going at a pace that's right for you. Tanya has put contracting and checking in as we move forward. Yeah, keep checking in. And also as a suggestion, when you have the chemistry meeting or discovery session, intro meeting, whatever you want to call it, and if you do them, asking, you know, how often would you like to have sessions? What works for you? Weekly, every 2 weeks, every month, or you know, however you work or get the best results from. And of course, those of you starting out, you are going to discover, and I encourage you to test out what works for you and to experiment what works best for clients, where you get the best results. The one thing that I can share that the research and my experience of 18 years comes out is that having momentum is, whatever that momentum is, whether it's weekly, fortnightly, or every 2 weeks, monthly, and that consistency does seem better than when it's all a bit ad hoc, as it were, and a bit not as regular. And but again, it's what works for you in your coaching practice, but also that goes at a pace that fits in with the rest of their world, because coaching is all about change and doing things differently, and there's actions to take away that your coachee will set, and you don't want the coaching to be a burden and overwhelm and stress. You want them to look forward to the sessions and see it very much. And I absolutely strongly believe that coaching should be fun, and if you're not having fun in the session and then you're not enjoying it, probably likely the client isn't either. So you know, it's got to be going at that pace for them. So that is one thing that you can help. Now, just to let you know, of course, the ICF wouldn't have an idea that you would have done that and sort of set the frequency of the sessions up at a pace. That kind of facilitating the client growth isn't going to come out. And there are a few things, as I'm sure you've learned with a lot of the competencies, that sometimes, you know, the ICF won't know that you're doing it, but it's kind of assumed. And it's my mouse not wanting to work. There we go. Facilitating client growth. And I've got here some sort of words that really highlight for me, and this is my brain, by the way, what stands out for me with this competency. And the word partners, transform, is learning and insight, action. And then it's the autonomy, that we're promoting client choice. They're making the decisions. They're in control, not us, as it were, of that. So there's that partnering transformation, learning and insight and interaction. So let's have a look at how we can sort of do that and build on what we've already started to think about here. So what is following now are the subset of each composition of the ICF competency. And we want to think, how do we do this? And as I say, we don't want to make this clunky in a session. What the ICF don't want to hear is as if you've done a checklist. Oh, am I doing this now? Am I working with the client to integrate new awareness, insight, or learning? Because it will show. It is about weaving it in very naturally. But obviously, for our purposes now, as we are really unpicking this, we can start to think about, well, how can we, you know, what kind of things would we be doing as a coach to integrate new awareness? What would be something that we could do that would help that? You know, the client has had an insight in their session, or perhaps between sessions, and they've come back and told you, oh, you know, I realised it was this, and wow, that's made such a difference. Hearing that, what could you do that would integrate it and build on that learning, in other words? Anybody got any ideas? And as I say, no right or wrongs. If you're thinking about this for the first time, for many of you, you might well be. Let's just see. Right, I can see a couple of raised hands, but I can't see you on my screen, so I'm gonna, I don't know, Kat, if you can help me, who was first?
I can, so I think we've got Lucy first.
Thank you, Lucy.
Hi, so I was thinking something around asking what action they'd like to perhaps take as a result from this learning, if anything, or how
Lovely.
they would like to integrate this learning into their life.
Thank you, Lucy. And I love the directness of your question. Often as coaches, we have to, I think we can complicate it a bit much, but actually say, yeah, how would you like to integrate this? What action do you want to take having had this insight? Is it Sandy next, Kat, and then Emma?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, I was going to go with asking how, but then I was also thinking about something recently in my own process where I spoke, where I had an image of something, and it was to do with my new practice. And, you know, I was talking about, well, I know what I'm bringing to the table. I know what the table is. And then suddenly I found that the table had no legs in my imagery. So I then went to my coach and she said, well, she wanted me to deepen that and to have a metaphor for that. And I thought that was the metaphor. But suddenly I had a tree with the roots going into the ground, and it was the end of winter. And what I realized was I need to ground what I've already learned and know before I start rushing off into, so that was my learning, and that is what I'm working with right now. So the whole coaching process took me deeper to to really ground what's next. Yeah.
Thank you, Sandy, for that wonderful metaphor and sharing what your coach enabled you to do, building on that metaphor. And can I suggest another way you could look at the table, thinking about this? And just thinking about this particular competency could be, where else in your life do you feel has no legs? The table has no legs.
At my age, not many places. I'm 69, so I think the table's got a lot of legs in other areas. But thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. So
I will consider it. Yeah.
You're helping your client to think and apply it worldview. Where else? And Emma, what would you like to add?
I sometimes invite the client to, I ask them if there is a way that they could remind themselves of what they've learned through either some kind of visual reminder. So, some clients have come up with things like, oh, I could put a post-it note on my computer, or I could have a photograph of the thing, whatever we're talking about, or a visual image, if visual works for them. And sometimes the client comes up with some kind of sentence or mantra to embody, but particularly to kind of reinforce and remind what they've realized.
Thank you, Emma, and I love that you're helping them to sort of take action to do something. And sounds like it could be that what behavior would illustrate you doing, integrating this new awareness now. And again, keep the questions simple. And Harry, I could see that you've got a question, what an insight. So what now? What do you want to do with it? What would you like to do with that? So yeah, keep it, be direct with it, but just see where else they can apply it, what they're going to take forward. Because remember, coaching is moving forward. What are they going to do with that? Okay. So this part is partners with the client to design goals, actions, and accountability measures that integrate the new and expand the new learning. So again, this is about the sort of action part and the accountability with that, and it's the designing. So again, if we are partnering with our client growth, what kind of things would we be saying as a coach to reflect this? Again, it's not a trick question. Lucy?
Something that comes up for me, and I've never asked it before, is the question, what could that look like in reality?
Love that.
In terms of a goal.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So super question. Thank you. What else could you be saying that would partner and help the client to design goals, actions, and how they're going to do the accountability? I'm nearly saying it then, I think. I think we've got Sandy, and I'm going to encourage all of you to step forward. Okay.
Yeah, have a plan, maybe 3 months, 6 months, to integrate, to actually express whatever it is. I think of a client I've had who started by saying, I love to paint, but my paints aren't the expensive ones. And she's moved forward now to actually call herself an artist, even though she has a full-time job elsewhere, and framing her artwork as Christmas presents this year, and so on. So she's beginning to be accountable for her art, which is beautiful. So yeah, that's just an example I can think of.
Yeah, wonderful. So it sounds like you were working with your client where she was at and really hearing that painting was going to help move her forward and what she wanted, and encouraging her with that. So congratulations for that. So yeah, it seems very much, and I think did some yeah. Oh, Joanna, I thought there was another hand up. Joanna.
I was just going to say, one of the things I noticed that I tended to do at the start was to ask how my client would like me to hold them accountable. But what I've sort of made a sort of conscious shift towards doing now is ask how they want to be held accountable, because I think I had a natural assumption that it was part of my job as a coach to do that, whereas actually some of my clients are incredibly, some of my clients do want me to kind of get in touch with them and say, how are you getting on? But actually I've got others who are really really self-motivated and actually just want to have actually articulated what they're going to do, and then for us to catch up in the next session. So it's just a sort of observation that I've noticed my approach to it's changed really.
Super, thank you, Joanna. And by you throwing it back to them, as I like to call it, you're throwing it back to the client. How would you like to hold yourself accountable? What do you think that does in their brain? I'll open it up to the group. Have you got any ideas?
It empowers them.
Empowers them, yeah. And we know from the neuroscience that when we take autonomy, when we own what we're doing, if we decide we're going to do something, and then if we write it down, our motivation to then do that is so much higher than if we've been told what to do. And so it is much more brain friendly, as Joanna has pointed out, to get them to decide how they're going to hold themselves accountable. What help do you need from me, your coach, to keep you accountable for what you say you're going to do, as it were, as well? But you know, how are you going to let me know you've done your action? What are you going to do? When do you want to do it by? Let them design it. And let them design the goal. Of course, it's got to be their wording and resonate with them, but also the accountability and how you can expand that learning. How can they build on that? And as coach, I would also say you're wanting to challenge and stretch them. You know, if they're saying, oh, come back with 3 ideas, what would it be like if you came back with 5? And really to see that their potential. And thank you, Kat. And I can see you've popped in the chat as well. What would you like to get out of the session? Absolutely, the outcome at the start. How will you know you've got what you needed? What would you like to take forward from what we've discussed today? Another great question there. Again, with that emphasis on forward, which what coaching is. And how can you keep yourself accountable? Let them own it. That is where they are owning, they're having the autonomy, which of course, this next part, acknowledge and supports client autonomy in the design of goals and actions and methods of accountability. That's what that is about. That's where you are letting them own that part and they're doing it for them. And I just want to check, is there anybody that's sort of thinking, oh, I'm not sure about this, or this isn't what I thought coaching was? I thought I had to do more work here. Just want to check.
Just thinking,
styling.
I'm just thinking it's a lot harder in practice than making it up here. Does that make sense to anyone?
Because, well, I'm intrigued by that, because how can you make it easier for yourself, Lucy?
Well, I don't know if I could just have a few almost standard sentences that I use most of the time here, especially for the ICF purpose of accreditation. But I notice often that clients respond in a way that doesn't allow me to ask further, or doesn't allow me to ask questions. So maybe I should then coach around that. But I just find this particular competency pretty challenging to put into practice.
Okay, so can you expand on, you know, what shuts them down, do you think, or closes them down? You've got a quick example you can share.
Let me think. I didn't really think before I spoke, so.
Don't worry. Well, we can come back to you in a minute, if you like, while you have a think.
Sure.
Okay. And just moving on then, supports the client in identifying potential results or learning from identified action steps. Again, if we think about this, let's be basic on this. What does that really mean? Who haven't we heard from yet? I want to encourage all of you to participate. Anybody got any ideas? What does that mean to you? And Emma, I can see your hand raised. Thank you. Go for it, Emma.
Okay. A question I sometimes use at the end of a session is, what is your main reflection or your main insight from today's session, so that the client's encouraged to reflect at that moment on the session?
Yeah, lovely question. What's the learning you're taking away? Yeah, and so you can, and Sam, let's come to you.
I think a lot of it, from my perspective, is just one, slowing the person down enough so that they can appreciate what they're actually registering and acknowledging them, for themselves, what they're actually thinking about. And also, you know, supporting them to expand their possibilities. This idea of identifying potential results, you know, what could happen. It's not just the default of, oh, you know, whenever I've tried this before, this is the result of it, and I don't think I can be bothered to do it because I know I'm going to get that result. But what if you got a different result? What if you could choose anything from this spectrum of possibilities about the outcome? And really feel that as well, rather than just kind of cerebrally registering. Actually, you know, what would it be like to be there?
Super, thank you so much for that, Sam. And I'm really sensing that you're helping them get back into vision. What would it be like if you did get that? And obviously we want to help our clients be at that level. So they're out of the problem and the drama and the detail, but into those expansive possibilities there. And really help them see that the actions are going to help them move forward. So the ones that they're setting to bring back to you next time they're learning, that they're going to help them do that. And of course, in that subsequent session where you debrief the actions, well, how did you get on with the actions? What's the learning you're taking away? How's that helped you to move forward? And, you know, if there's positive things that they're sharing, and only if they're positive, how do you feel about that? Because if they're not so happy, sometimes clients haven't done everything, shock horror, they haven't done always their actions. There's also learning to be done there, but you don't want to then go in the pit of despair and then feeling bad. It's like, okay, thank you for being so honest with me about what you didn't get done. However, I'm hearing you've done a lot of thinking about this. Hearing me say that, what reflections are you having about that now? That then opens it up all again. Okay, so I'm conscious of we're doing this at a very high level, of course, today. But what about this one? Invites the client to how to move forward, including resources, support, and potential barriers. So again, if we're partnering with them, we're transforming the learning and insight into action, and we're promoting client autonomy in this process. Again, what are we doing here that would illustrate this, do you think? Anybody got any ideas? And Sam, thank you.
This was something that came up for us in our first discussion in the breakout room, was if coaching is going around in circles and perhaps not producing the right results for this person, then it's perhaps our responsibility to think, you know, what other resources or services do they need to consider to actually get what they need if they haven't got enough information themselves.
Okay, and that's an interesting one, Sam. Yeah. And how would you do that so that you weren't telling them?
I guess in a similar way that you might bring psychoeducation or neuroscientific insights into it, that it might be helpful to consider this because these are general rules which might assist. So it's difficult, isn't it? Yeah. How do you tell someone that they might need mentoring rather than coaching, and whether that's something you offer as well, or whether it's something you're not prepared to offer them.
In that example, can I quickly share a suggestion of how I might tackle that, if that's helpful, or I can open it up to the rest of the group?
By all means.
And it's because it sounds like there's a couple of things going on. If you're, and just to make it clear for everyone, if you're sensing that perhaps they're not ready for coaching, they're not ready to move forward, take action, make changes, that they're not in the right space, which can happen, of course. But hopefully we've ironed it out in a chemistry meeting and you thought, no, I'm not sure they're ready. But, you know, if they're not and they haven't decided for themselves, it's where you share what you're noticing. And it could be, can I share what I'm picking up from you about the coaching? And then share, I'm sensing that you're not ready to move forward and take actions. You know, hearing me say that, what's going on for you? And again, be sort of very coach-like about it, as it were. You know, and if they say, do you know what, Rachel, you're right, I'm not ready, loads of stuff's going on now, I just can't do this, but I do think I'm realising I need to dig deep on what happened years ago with my family and whatever. Then you can say, well, would you like me to suggest some other help that you might want to seek that could help you do that? If they say yes, then you can then email them trusted partners, if you like, that you've got that could help in that way. So it's a very sensitive thing. But in the client, in the session though, if they're thinking, right, I've had these insights, I've got all these things going on, how can you help them think about how to move forward, and maybe what resources, support, potential barriers that could be going on? And I can see Sandy and then Tanya. So being very succinct, because we've got some coaching practice to get to in a minute. Sandy.
Yeah, basically it's getting the client to be realistic, and there may be limiting beliefs, but there's also the external world. It's very easy in a coaching session, certainly in my experience myself, to be really enthusiastic, but to look at potential barriers as well as resources and support, I think is vitally important, because otherwise they could feel that they failed when they haven't really. So yeah.
Thank you for that, and I'll come back to that in a minute. Tanya, what would you like to add?
If in the outcome, if in the beginning of the session they've mentioned that they would like the outcome to be some frameworks or some action plans that they would like to work on, then maybe towards the end, asking them a scale question. So where are you right now? If they say 7, then okay, what is that one thing you can do to move from 7 to 8, then 8 to 9, and then 9 to 10? So they have step-by-step action plans ready, and they know they just have to cross one level at a time.
Thank you, Tanya. And yeah, a lovely scaling question there, out of 10, which you can use in all sorts of scenarios there. And they're designing, as you were hearing from Tanya there, their own action plan, which is in manageable steps, which is much more easy for the brain to get its head around, far less overwhelming, so that they're in control. And so thank you very much for that. And it could also be, you know, what ideas have you got for how to move forward? You've come up with a load of insights. What are some of the ideas? And you can collect a brainstorm of loads of ideas. And of course, you really want to help your client get their ideas, and for you not to have to say a word of what you think they might do or what your other clients have done. And funny enough, I was doing a workshop with internal coaches in an organisation earlier this morning, and I'll share the same question because they loved it. If a client is stuck and they're saying, Rachel, I don't know, you tell me what I should do. I don't know, I've come to you, you're my coach. It happens rarely, but it can happen. You know, I've no idea, never done this before, I've no idea. I've got, my mind is a blank. And then what you can do is, because you want to encourage their thinking, as always, is say something like, you know, well, is there somebody you admire in the public eye, or a leader that you know at work, or somebody in your family? And generally they'll yeah, yes. And I had a client recently who said, I love Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, love his exercise, love everything he does. So I said, okay, so what would The Rock do? And that got him into this whole other world. And of course, we weren't really thinking about what The Rock was doing. We were thinking about what he was wanting to do. But it opened up and it's removed the block of his thinking and feeling stuckness. And so getting them out of their thinking, but they're still doing the thinking. And that helps stop you doing it for them. Another question that I've used, if you did know, what would you tell me? Which of course is a bit of a brain scramble. And you can't use that one too often. But again, it's a powerful question because of course they do know and they'll just blurt it out. And I can see Kat agreeing with me here and smiling away. Thank you for that. But of course, yeah, what support would you like? What support do you think you need to help get that done? And of course, as coaches, we don't really want to go into the barriers very much and what's getting in the way. But of course, occasionally, if they're thinking, oh, I'm not sure if I've got time or work, okay, so what could get in the way of you completing this by the time we next meet? You can then help them plan. And I can share with you, having worked as I do in elite sport, they plan for everything going wrong. And there's a plan for it, what they would do, which it means on the medal day, they just rehearse what they planned. And I think sometimes, often in our world, we don't, because we as coaches don't want to look at the negative, we don't think of that perhaps enough as other areas in life. Okay, so how can they let you know that you know what the partnering with the client to summarise learning and insight within or between sessions? And I think we heard from this earlier that you know, you're encouraging them to tell you, and it is simple as that. How can you let me know that you know what's going, you know, your success? Yeah, oh, I'll email you. Okay, when are you going to email me then? And you want them to take charge of that rather than you saying, okay, I'm going to email you on Friday at 5, which sometimes I do, depending, as we heard earlier, where the client is at with their motivation. If you're doing something with procrastination, you might need to handhold them a little bit more at the start so that they get the confidence up. Okay, so, and then celebrates your client's progress and successes. I think this is obvious. However, I find with coaches that I train and assess, mentor, often I find coaches, we don't do this enough. And you can do this throughout the session. And what little things could you acknowledge your client for and help them celebrate? Just type in the chat or shout out. Anybody got any ideas, or you're just wanting to get into the coaching now, aren't you? Courage and bravery, love that, Sandy. Yes. Reflect changes you're noticing in their actions and the thoughts. Reaching a goal, absolutely. Doing something that was challenging, or it could be in a first session, how much they've thought and reflected, how open they've been to the coaching. It has to be authentic, absolutely. However, you know, that helps the brain be in what we call a towards state and then being open to the coaching. There's not enough space for me to go into that in detail today, but it helps them be in that optimal state. And ask them how they feel. Yeah, what do you want to acknowledge yourself for with this? How are you going to celebrate? How are you going to reward yourself? I find clients are very reluctant to set rewards for their plans, for their goals. And Joanna, coming back to you, your hand is raised.
I just wondered if you had any insights on how to avoid tipping into judgment. So obviously, if you're telling somebody they've done a really good job, although that's positive, you are also slightly, there's a risk, I suppose, that you're kind of potentially somehow articulating your kind of own judgment on how well they're doing. So do you have any, and obviously that's not the same as saying, well, that's a bit rubbish, but like, do you, so I'm sure they wouldn't take it that way, but do you have any kind of suggestions or insights into like where the tipping point is and how to navigate that?
Yeah, and thank you, Joanna. It's a great question. And I know that there are some coaches out there in the world that won't say to a client, well done. They disagree with it. And the thing is, if I say to you, well done, it kind of can over the head, as it were. We don't feel it in our brain even so well. So it's about deepening it. And as we've been seeing in the chat from what people are contributing, it's about being authentic and noticing specifics. You know, I remember, and I'll give you an example. I remember last session, you were really scared about setting that as an action to go and talk to that person and ask them to help you. And I really want to acknowledge the courage you've shown for immediately after our session, contacting them, arranging a meeting and asking for their help. Hearing me say that, what would you like to say to yourself about this? Now, does that feel different just to a well done for doing that? Anybody disagree? It's heartfelt and you're noticing them because you notice that they were scared and you've noticed that they've had courage and done it. Does that help, Joanna? Back to you.
Yeah, thank you. That's great.
Okay. So you want to help reward their brain. And what's been found is when we give positive feedback, when it really is powerful, the brain does sort of hear it, if you like, and kind of thinks, oh, I like that feeling, I want it again. So I'm more likely to do it again. So it is very powerful. There's neuroscience to back it up. Okay. So to close the session, it's very much about ensuring the outcome is achieved. And I'm just going to go through this so that you can get into your coaching. If we had an outcome at the start, you know, oh, remember at the start, you said you wanted to feel energized and to leave the session with some insights on a decision and to move forward. I'm making that up, by the way. And how have we done? Oh, yeah, really well. And you could say back to, was it Tanya's question about how out of 10, how have we done for you? You know, how have we achieved that outcome? And if they say an 8, well, what do we have to do to get it a 10 before you leave the session today? Oh, I might have to go and do the action. Okay. Help the coachee to reflect and summarise the learning and insights generated. So this is where you're saying, okay, what's the key insight you're taking away? What's the key learning you're taking away from our coaching session today? How would you like to acknowledge yourself? And by doing that, by closing the session and getting them to own it, and you could, as a suggestion, as some of you may already do, just want to remind you, remind me, the coach, what actions are you taking away? You get them to tell you, and you check that you've written down the same thing, so that it works, so that they are owning that. Some of them might say, oh, can you email me my actions? If you're doing that, you're not partnering with them in as deep a way, because you're owning that part. You want them to have ownership and to be writing them down. And by doing this and partnering them with a what this does is gives a full stop to the coaching before, of course, you and them go off to do something else. It might be more coaching or another meeting or whatever. So you want to give them that full stop so that they wrap the session in a way that works for them. And as a suggestion, sometimes I say, ask them, you know, what else would you like to say? Or what would you like to say that will wrap the session up in a way that works for you? Any questions before we get into coaching? And I'm very conscious, I said that I would come back also to Lucy, and I don't know if you've reflected on what you were thinking and things have been answered, or you want to take it into the coaching session.
No, it's fine. We can leave it. Thanks.
Okay. All right. All right. So the idea then with all of this is that this is about, if you're doing too much talking in a coaching session, you're probably owning the growth and not your client. And as I said, if you are doing too much talking, you're working too hard as a coach. Give it to the client, throw it back, let them do the thinking, let them take the decisions. Okay. So we want to think about how we can integrate all these compositions, this part of this competency, and just have a go at coaching with it. So time-wise, now where are we? Think of a current dilemma, challenge or area that you would like to enhance or love to be coached on. And it could be your coaching skills, by the way, if you really can't think of anything, or just where you are at in your coaching development, just for a very short conversation. And I'm going to be challenging you with this because some of you might never have done a super fast coaching conversation. But I assure you, there is a lot you can get done in a short space of time. It really does laser the focus. Okay. So just think of something you'd be happy to be coached on for a short coaching conversation and what the outcome is that you would like. And then we'll go into practice. The coachee, you'll share the dilemma or challenge or area that you'd like to enhance. And the coach just focus on facilitating the learning and growth. And hopefully we will have time because we're only going to have, now I'm going to give you a choice also. You can either do 2 short little conversations or one of you choose to be coach, one of you coachee for the whole lot. And as a suggestion for some feed forward, give each other, you know, what I liked, what I'll do more of to enhance my skills next time, just to share what resonates with you from that. How is my placement? Anybody sure, not sure about what's going to happen? We'll tell you the time in a minute. You're just going to have a go at this, okay? All right, so Kat, I'm going to say over to you. Can we have 10 minutes, please?
Yes, we can. Okay.
In pairs, 10 minutes in pairs, and happy coaching. And remember, just give this a go. Just even test out one thing that you've heard or thought of today. Give it a go.
Okay. Opening the rooms now.
So welcome everyone, and I can see smiling faces, which usually tells me you've had some very interesting and useful coaching conversations there. And so we want to just hear, as we move to wrap up the session, as time is of the essence with 5 minutes remaining, what's the key insight that you're taking away from today? What will you start doing differently in your coaching? And again, what support do you need from each other or anybody? And just reflect on that in a moment. And I just want to remind you, while you're reflecting on that, you know, when we get out of our comfort zone, when we do things differently, that's where the magic happens. So before we stop the recording and I share my mentoring offers, because I promised I was only going to share them to those that actually turned up, took action, put themselves first in their coaching. I was only going to share them to you. I just want to hear what's your insights that you're taking away from today. You can type in the chat or call them out. And you can just share what happened in the coaching, what skill or strength you've uncovered. I love that. So Lucy, thank you. Your insights, be more direct. Don't be afraid to ask. Well done in showing that courage. Go lightly and trust. Yes, trust the process. Thank you, Desi. Trust in the silence. Yes. Yeah, that active listening, we want to be trusting in the silence. It's powerful. Thank you. Who else? Anybody else like to contribute verbally? Come off mute. What's insight you're taking away? Or what new skill you've just uncovered from your coaching conversation? Let the client own the journey. Thank you, Emma. Anybody else? Oh, Harry, yes, empowering your client. Trust them. They can design their own action without our help. Absolutely. The more the client is coaching themselves, the more you are operating at PCC level, by the way. They're doing it all for them, and you're thinking, I'm not really sure I'm doing much here. You're doing a lot by not doing it. So great insight. Anybody else? And being prepared to describe what I observe. Absolutely. We get paid as coaches to say the stuff clients don't want to hear, because we can say it in a non-judgmental way, because we're not connected to friends, family, or their work. So yes, share what you're noticing in a positive way, of course. I just want to flag that up. Okay, so I promised you that I would share a couple of offers for you, and I just want to, before I do that, just want to say thank you for your attention today. Thank you for putting your clients first, and for you thinking about how you can be the best coach for your clients and enhance your skills. You showing up has told me a lot about you, that you do that and you want to learn and grow, and you're facilitating your own growth as well. So really want to say thank you for that, and thank you for being so participatory in typing in the client in the chat box and speaking as well.